Hello guys, we are on the fifth game of the Dominating the Open File series, and this game is a Ruy Lopez game played between Karpov and Unzicker in 1974. The white player is Karpov. The game goes e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, and bishop a4, knight f6, and short castles, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, short castles, h3, knight a5, bishop c2, c5, d4, queen c7, knight bd2, knight c6. Normal moves for the Ruy Lopez. Karpov was recognized as an expert on this opening. This game is one of his masterpieces. Now Karpov plays d5. So he wants to close the center and launch kingside play according to the usual scheme of knight f1 and to knight to g3 with or without pushing g4, and to prepare f4 in favorable conditions. He is ready to keep the position stable or blocked on the queen side, but if needed, that side can be opened with a4. Knight f1 is also playable, keeping various possibilities in the center. Now knight d8. Knowing the rest of the game, black should have tried something else. Knight b8 with the idea to place the knight on d7 was solid. The knight looks more flexible there on b7 there than on b7. a4. Black cannot collect rooks after his next move, so the move chosen by Karpov is very logical. Rook b8. Here if bishop b7 is played, then after a b5 and a b5, rook takes a8 and bishop takes a8. Now b3 looks better for white. He is ready to switch activities to the king side and to block the position on the queen side, whatever black chooses, like b4 or c4. So black goes rook b8. Now after a b5, then b4. Here b3 also can be played. Karpov here immediately blocks the position on the queen side and paralyzes the black rook and also the bishop and knight. Knight b7. Here if at all cb4 is played, then after cb4, queen c3 is false activity, because after rook a7, bishop to d7, now rook to e3, the queen must retreat. Queen to c8, now rook to a3. This rook come to rook ea3 with this significant advantage for white. If queen takes b4, then there is bishop a3 here. So that now black goes knight b7, knight f1, bishop d7, bishop e3. White patiently finishes development while black pieces struggle to find comfortable position. Now rook a8, queen d2, rook fc8, now bishop d3, g6, knight g3. White has more options and can go for multifunctional moves. After placing all his pieces on optimal squares, he goes for infiltration down the A file. Bishop f8, rook a2, c4. This is a positional capitulation. After black hoped that blocking the position would reduce white's growing initiative on the queen side. Actually, white has control over the A file and the A7 G1 diagonal, which is enough for him. On the king side, long-term possibilities are still available. Here instead of c4, if black plays rook takes a2, then queen takes a2, then cb4, after cb4, queen to c3. Now queen b1 is undoubtedly better for white. Black temporarily prevents infiltration, but there will be soon be problems within the b5 pawn. I mean with the b5 pawn, which can also be attacked by white queen and knight. After c4, now bishop b1. Now the bishop can be transferred to e2. This bishop on b1 is little passive. It could have been transferred to e2 and prevents the possible f5 thrust by black. Now queen d8, bishop a7. This is the key move and a famous one, and this is one of Karpov's trademarks. White temporarily closes the A file and making time to double or even triple on the A file. Then the bishop will be removed and the rooks will infiltrate. Chess is actually a rather simple game. Black cannot prevent white's plan. The bishop on A7 is untouchable. Knight E8, and then bishop C2, knight C7, rook EA1, queen E7, bishop B1, bishop E8, knight E2, reshuffling the knights. Now knight D8, knight H2, bishop G7. Black's pieces wander aimlessly. Karpov felt that this was the best moment to switch sides. Here f4, then f6. Here if he takes f4, then knight takes f4 is much better for white. There are new possibilities on the king side related to the potential use of the weak f6 and h6 squares after playing bishop d4 and knight g4. For instance, the point is that black cannot transfer a knight to the perfect outpost on e5, while many white pieces have access to the important d4 square. The backward pawns on e4 is not a weakness, of course, as the black rooks cannot use the e file. After e4, black plays f6, now f5. Black's lack of space is felt more and more. Of course, he should somehow open the position to get fresh air, but it is very difficult to find a way. Now g5. If at all gf5, then ef5 will give white both perfect blockading squares on e4 for his knight and a very dangerous majority on the king side. Now After g5, bishop c2, and the bishop is coming to d1 h5 diagonal. Bishop f7. Here h5 and bishop d1, and after white puts knight g3, it will force black to advance the h pawn once again. Then white will open the position on the king side with g3. Now after bishop f7, knight g3, knight b7, bishop d1, h6, and bishop h5, queen e8. And here is Karpov's patient regrouping and brutal realization. Black is forced to wait for an execution. Queen d1, knight d8, and then rook a3, king f8, rook 1 a2, king g8, knight g4, king f8, knight e3, king g8. Now Karpov goes for the kill. Bishop takes f7, knight takes f7. Here, if at all, after instead of knight takes f7, if queen takes f7, then after queen h5, exchanging the queens, then after putting g4 and h5, the move bishop b6 will put an end to black's resistance. So knight takes f7, queen h5, knight d8, queen g6, king f8. If at all the queen would have taken on g6, then the knight would have come to f5 and the other knight to h5. So then knight to h5 and black resigned. This is one of the strategical masterpieces of Karpov. After white placed the bishop on a7, black was forced for a long time to take care of the incoming infiltration along the a file. This caused some paralysis and white effectively crushed black's defenses on the opposite side of the board. There are so many instructive moments in this game. I hope you would have enjoyed the game. I'll be meeting you in the next game, guys. Thank you all.